I'll do my best. So welcome everyone, and so glad to see all of you, or not see you. As Michelle was saying, I did this presentation a few times in just before the pandemic hit, and we had just a tremendous outpouring of interest, which was really, really wonderful. So I'm glad to see that the interest persists when there's so many challenging and distracting issues. That I think this is sort of the purpose of art, right? Is to help us heal and see our past and our present and our humanity. So I think that it all makes a lot of sense. So thank you, Michelle, for making this happen and for running such an amazing program through the library. My talk is Where Are All the Great Women Artists? And sometimes on my title, I write, Psst, they're in the basement, because they're there and we know that. And back in 1971, feminist scholar Linda Nochlin asked the question, why are there no great women artists? With the assumption that there weren't any. Where were they? It was a fair question then, but now we know they were there. We just haven't heard about most of them. And they're being discovered. It's a very exciting time. So, there we go. So how I got interested in this subject, I'm an artist, but for a very long time I was not. For 37 years, my career was of a midwife and a women's rights activist, women's health provider. But in my teens, I was a budding artist, and I had the great good fortune of finding an amazing mentor who worked in the classical tradition of oil painting. He taught me the fundamentals and the foundation. I've never forgotten any of what he taught me. But off I went to art school, and boy, was I surprised when I found that in art school, the focus was not on building beautiful technique and skills, but actually on de-skilling and abstract expressionism. It didn't work for me. I know it works for lots of folks, but I left art school. And through great good luck and happenstance, I was able to pursue a career in women's health. The work that I did was life-changing, and it took me to more than 24 countries. Starting off as a midwife with life floating into my hands and working closely with women, and then traveling the world and working with women in the most difficult situations. I saw daily the impact of gender bias in women's lives, whether that was women, middle-class women trying to have a natural childbirth when I started out, or very poor women trying to access healthcare. That gender bias stunted their potential, endangered their very lives. The impact of gender politics was the norm in my daily life. It is what I lived for 40 years, and I still do. I see everything through a gender lens, which is how you're going to look with me tonight. Anyway, 15 years ago, I returned to painting. I hadn't touched it for 25 years. 6 years ago, I resigned from my beloved but demanding job as executive director of a women's health program that spanned 5 countries. I started to paint full-time. So I searched for inspiration. Of course, I searched and looked for other women to see what they were doing. And looking through my gender lens, I had to ask, where were all the great women artists? So I started going to galleries and looking for the women. They were there, but not too many of them. I looked in the art magazines. It seemed that men were always the big story. So I looked to the great museums. I went to the Metropolitan Museum of Art, that shrine of Western art, and there I found them, lots of women. On the walls, but not in the signatures. What I found were just thousands of paintings of beautiful women, not so beautiful women. And I started doing some research, and I was shocked to learn that as of 2010, less than 4% of the artists in the modern section of the Metropolitan Museum of Art were women. And yet a whopping 76% of the nudes were female. That was back in 2010. But a recent update in the New York Times in 2021, just last month or the month before, they found that not much had changed. Though we're starting to hear more about women through solo and group shows, are receiving more attention because of the Me Too movement and women's voices being heard, there's been no increase in acquisitions by museums or sales at auction. So it seems that I used to roam the Met as a teenage artist, and I never noticed. I'm wondering if you did. So let's ask. Okay, this is where it gets a little bit tricky because you probably all have your mutes on. So I'm going to ask, can you name 3 great women artists? You can't name Frida, and you can't name Georgia.
Marie Cassatt.
Okay, we got Mary Cassatt. I was going to say you can't name Mary Cassatt, but can we go beyond those 3? Leslie, you can't name any because Leslie is an amazing professional artist. She spent her whole life knowing who the women are.
Frida Kahlo.
Yeah.
Frida Kahlo.
Yep, can't name Frida.
Oh.
Can't name Georgia. Can't name Mary. So, and what happens when we up it to 5? If you couldn't name 5, don't feel bad, because even if you studied art history, how would you know? I'm trying to figure out how to see myself here and still be able to see so forgive me a moment. I'm just trying to do a little technical thing here. Nah, not gonna let me. All right, I'm gonna have to just do it blind. If you studied art history, how would you know? Most Americans, at least. I don't know the other art history books being used, but if you took the freshman survey course on art history, I did, you would have been given this book, Janssen's History of Art. And that's where you should have learned about all the fabulous women artists, right? So the first quiz is, can you name 5 artists? The second one is, as of 1985, how many of the 3,000 art entries do you think were created by women? And again, I can't really see you, so we're going to have to just guess. And the answer is none. And if you didn't get that, it's 0. None. Absolutely not one. So does that mean that as of 1985, centuries of Western art, there was not one great woman artist to include in Mr. Janssen's book? Or were they just invisible? Or we just invisible to Mr. Janssen and the rest of us? It's amazing. It's shocking. I couldn't believe it when I learned it. And I grabbed everyone's book of Janssen's and I read through the index. There must be one. No. So if you studied art, and maybe you didn't even notice that there were no female artists, I didn't, and I was an absolute feminist, and there weren't many in the museums, and you can't really think of any, then it must be true. Men must simply be better artists, right? Art made by women must be inferior to art made by men. I think it's simple, because if there's no great ones, They must be inferior. And surely we can tell greatness when we see it, because it's objective and men know that. So the results should be obvious. So let's check. Here's two beautiful paintings from the 16th century. And only one of these made it into Jansen. Which one is great? I kind of need everybody's mute off, Michelle, if that's possible. I can't see everyone, but I could hear you if you say it. Which one's great? Left or right?
Left.
Left.
Because it's objective, you can tell. So on the left, painting by Lavinia Fontana. She was born in 1552, died in 1614. She was considered the first professional female painter. And she was famous throughout Europe. She became the portraitist for Pope Paul V. And how did she do it? Her husband took care of their 11 children.
Oh,
Let's hear it for that guy.
Mhm.
You know?
Yeah.
No, we're actually not going to give him any credit. What the hell? You know, she was making a living. Okay, here's another one. Which of these two famous portraits is great? Only one's great. Only one made it into Jansen. Which one? Yell, right or left?
Left. The left one is.
Left Caravaggio.
The left one's Caravaggio? Yeah, either that or it's Artemisia
No,
Gentilini.
it's Gentilis.
And the other one's Caravaggio. Now you have to understand, Artemisia is a woman who had been maligned on many, many ways. We won't go into it. I mean, she got her arms into this portrait, right? Where Caravaggio, he was just like, can I just step away from this, right? Anyway, didn't make it into Jansen's. There we go. Okay, so here's two really similar paintings, right? The old young, sweet peasant girl. One of them is great. Which one? It's okay if you can't tell.
Left.
Left.
Absolutely.
Both.
William Bouguereau and Elizabeth Jane Gardner. All right. So Elizabeth Jane Gardner, she's interesting. She's a local girl. She was born in Exeter, New Hampshire in 1837. She studied in Massachusetts first before she traveled to France, where everyone, any woman of any ability and intelligence went. She was rejected by the top art school because of her sex. So she applied to the government to wear pants. She cut off all her hair and she got in as a male. She was the first and only American to win a medal from the Paris Salon. She was successful in France and the United States. Her portraits were sold widely. And then she married Bouguereau and she stopped painting to take care of him.
Oh, goodness.
Oh my. Anyway, it's a beautiful painting. Okay, here's two more. Which one's great? Yell.
The left is a woman.
Left.
You guys are smart.
Right.
Okay, Elizabeth Vigée-Lebrun or Alexander Roslin. So who is Alexander Roslin? Huh? Anybody know? No.
No.
He made it into Jansen and she did not. So this is a beautiful portrait by Vigée-Lebrun. Beautiful, beautiful portrait. Anyway, not great. Sorry. Okay, here's two more. Oops, I'm sorry. I went to, uh-oh, I told you the answer. Okay, this one's obvious, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of these is better than the other, and there's no question, and only one of them made it into Jansen's, and that was Turner.
Oh.
I mean, he really had to stick to his boats and his oceans because he wasn't so good at cows and horses. Anyway, here we go. Let's see. All right, here's another one. Same topic, women with low-cut dress, ruffles on her shoulders, flower in her hair. One of them's great, one of them's not. Which one's great?
Left.
Right.
Yeah. So they're the same, you know, they're two of the same genre, painted really well, or not, depends on your taste, because a lot of art is that. Eva Gonzalez, she studied with Manet, and she was a member of the elite Impressionist group, along with Degas, Monet, all of them. But she didn't get her name into the papers the way they did. And she's now long forgotten, because who has heard of Eva Gonzalez? And then the last one. We know we know greatness when we see it. One of these made it into Jansen. Okay, I'm not going to talk about that anymore. So why don't we know about these obviously great artists who happen to be women? After all, because greatness is objective. We know that, right? I think it might be that we all need to have our eyes examined.
Yeah.
Okay, because we're not even believing what we're seeing right in front of us. So I don't want to spend all the time grousing about the challenges women faced. We know that our contemporary brains have been trained to dismiss women as not serious on many levels, and certainly not great artists. And that bias has long existed and has been vehemently reinforced. Our task now is to reclaim the artists, to find them in the vaults and the basements of the great museums. That's where most of them are. Dust them off and begin to tell a fresh story, one that creates the legacy for young artists to follow, male and female, and adds to the art treasures that we can all enjoy. I mean, we have all been deprived of half of the world's population's artistic output. So there's thousands of wonderful painters who happen to be female, who we don't yet know about. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to start with this painting, just to show an artist, a woman, and her students at work. It's just not a vision that we see very often or have seen very often. This is Adélaïde Labille-Guiard. And I want to first apologize to anyone who finds offense with my French, because I don't speak French. Born in 1749, died in 1803. She was an outstanding portraitist and was admitted to Paris's Royal Academy of Painting and Sculpture as early as 1783. Very rare. While her acceptance into the Academy was a great honor, the king, by royal decree, capped the total number of female members to 4. Only 4.
Mm-hmm.
So because only 4 women were allowed at any one time as a member, Adélaïde students were barred from showing in the royal exhibition at the Louvre. So her self-portrait with 2 peoples, in essence, put 3 women into the show. It was very clever, very defiant thing to do. This is in the Met. It's a magnificent painting. If you're there, take a look. We're going to fast forward to the next century. Paris became the center of the art world, and students from all over wanting to study art rushed to Paris. The students were mostly male, and the academies were only open to men. Young women needed to find private teachers, and it was prohibited for them to study anatomy from the nude figures. It wasn't until the mid-century, with the rise of the Impressionists and their challenge to the whole system of French art training, including the need to exhibit at the Salon or the Royal Exhibition as the only path to success, that the value started to change and women were finally allowed to study. And in case you get excited about that as fairness, it was because there was a drop in the numbers of men, so there were spots in the schools And so they had to expand who they allowed in. But even then, women were segregated from their male peers, and many of the best teachers, and were only allowed to draw from discreetly shielded models, if at all. So women faced formidable challenges to their ability to find their greatness, and yet they did. There's a golden age, I think, an era of tremendous greatness. Women artists in Paris between 1850 and 1900. And you'll see that all of these women were born right in around 1830, and they passed away in the early 1900s. And there was this period of time when the new woman was taking hold, and women were fighting for their rights. They were fighting for the right to vote, the feminist agenda, and they were painting. So I'm so excited to share some of this magnificent art with you. So here we are back to Rosa. Rosa Bonheur, as many of you probably know by now. This is one of her most famous paintings. She was born in 1822. This was the horse fair that she painted in 1853. Her background was she was taught by her father, who was an artist. He believed in, he was a bit of a socialist. He believed in women's education, but he also believed in communal living, and he abandoned his family and left them in poverty, 4 children. And Rosa was the oldest, and she had to work to help her mother. Her mother died of stress and exhaustion. She was always exceptional. She exhibited in the Paris Salon at age of 19, but her interest was in painting animals. But in order to get into the stockyards and fairs and draw, she had to petition the government for special permission to wear pants. She could not go in with these voluminous skirts. She wore pants the rest of her life. And here, just for fun, is her permission slip to wear pants. That's what also Gardner had to do as well. She was wildly successful. I mean, she's a brilliant painter, I think in a league of her own. She was so successful, by the age of 31, she went from poverty to this being her house.
Wow.
And she shared it with many women artists and many, many animals. There was a beautiful picture of her studio, and her studio was a barn, and half the barn was occupied by animals, both stuffed and real, that she used as her models. And she had a lion pair and many, many animals all throughout the place, acres and acres. It's a museum now. Here's a picture of Rosa that was painted by her, one of her students late in life, and who became her companion and then took over her estate for her in order to make sure her legacy survived. Anna Klumpke. Beautiful, beautiful portrait. Here's a favorite of mine. This is Marie Bashkirtsev. She's Ukrainian, born in 1858, died in 1884. And by all accounts, she was a brilliant young woman. She spoke Russian, French, English, and Italian. She started in a singing career, but she gave it up because she developed a case of tuberculosis. She didn't start painting till she was 19, when she enrolled in the Julian Academy in Paris, and she died at the age of 25. Just 6 years of painting. She left behind a diary where she spoke about the discrimination of women in art. Beautiful painting. Here's another one of hers. 6 years, start to finish. Amazing. Here's another, a favorite of mine, Amelie Beaury-Saurel, and do my best, Beaury-Saurel, born in 1849. She debuted in the Paris Salon in 1874 at the age of 25. This is her painting, Portrait of Séverine. She was born in Barcelona. She studied again at the Atelier Julian, which is one of the only ones that allowed women in. And then she married him and took over the school and taught women artists. That's pretty cool. I happen to absolutely love this painting. I think in many ways it is my favorite painting of a woman of all the paintings I've seen. It just has strength, it has power, it's magnificent. That red, that shadows from the beginning through the middle to the side of her. I just love this. I absolutely love it. I would love to live with this one. Here's another of hers, and I love how she portrays women. It's just not, you remember that Modigliani where the naked woman is lounging on the divan? I mean, how many of you out there do that? But I do every evening, you know, and I don't do anything. I just lie there thinking. Anyway, I love coffee cup, cigarette, elbows on the table. She's thinking, she's talking, they're having a conversation. I just love it. Here's a beautiful painting by Cecilia Beaux, who many of you may know. She is one of the more famous women painters, 1855 to 1942. She continued to paint until she was 87 years old when she died. She was considered in her time by many as better than Sargent or Cassatt.
That's who she looks like. I mean, yeah, that's who I thought of.
She studied at the Julian Academy. She won in the Paris Salon. And she said, here's a nice quote from her, "A perfect technique in anything means that there has been no break in continuity between the conception and the act of performance." So she's thinking, her brain to her canvas, no break. "When I attempt anything, I have a passionate determination to overcome every obstacle. I do my own work with a refusal to accept defeat that might almost be called painful." Who does that sound like? Many of the women that I know. Louise Breslau, German, 1856. This is called Everything Passes. This is a self-portrait. She is, you can see her in the right side of the canvas. She is sketching the very painting that she's doing. And I love that. That's really beautiful. She went to the Julian Academy and Salon at 23. She opened her own academy and made a living as a portraitist. I love this one. Asta Norgard, Norwegian, 1853 to 1933. She was born in Oslo, lost both her parents at an early age. She went on to study art in Germany, then Paris. She was famous in her time for her portraits of men and women in society. She painted the portrait of Edvard Munch and the King of Norway, to name just two. This painting, when I saw it on the wall down at the Clark Museum, it knocked me off my feet. You can't really see it here. The paint, the colors just sparkled in a way that I've rarely seen, except for Rosa Bonheur. Here's Elizabeth Norris. This is the one that I use I love this painting. I don't know why they're doing what they do, why they wear those hats, but I just love this. Elizabeth Norris was an American painter born in Cincinnati. She studied at the Art Students League in New York and then moved to the Atelier Julian in Paris. She was the first woman to be voted into the National Society of Fine Arts. And she was described by her contemporaries as the first woman painter of America, the dean of American women painters in France, and one of the most eminent contemporary artists of her sex. She was part of that New Woman movement, and like so many other of these painters, she did not marry. I love it. Berthe Wegman, 1847, 1926, a Danish portrait painter of German ancestry. She was the first woman to hold a chair at the Royal Danish Academy of Fine Arts. So these are amazing women with prominent in their fields, and they still weren't included. It's just stunning. It's just, the invisibility is just mind-boggling and a loss to all of us. One more. Henriette Brown. Anyone who follows me on Facebook may have seen that I'm doing a master copy of this painting. I'm going to do it as a gift to my granddaughter, my baby granddaughter. And it's just such a gorgeous painting. I can hardly stand being in there with it. I just love every brushstroke. She's Henriette Brown is the alias of Sophie de Beautrelet, born in 1829 in Paris. She was internationally renowned as a French Orientalist painter, but she used a pseudonym. She changed her name to that of her maternal grandmother because it was improper for a lady of her social stature to be an artist. Her work sold for high prices, New York, Paris, and were included in the Paris Salon. I think it's just I don't know how she didn't get to take credit for the work that she did, right? She had, she wore a mask, but boy, she's a beautiful painter. So anyway, that was then, this is now.
7 on.
And we know that women have progressed in all aspects of life, right?
If you say so.
Yeah, let's ask this Danish painter. I just found this. This is wonderful. Her name is Emma Spar from Sweden. And she painted this in 1890 as a portrait of herself. What she was trying to say, I don't know. She's saying it for me. I'll tell you that. This is hilarious. But so here's how women are doing, right? Visual artists, 50%. So they're doing fine in at least one category, trying to make a living through art. But in terms of gallery representation, major exhibitions, art sold at auction, this is how you live success, right? And not so much. Not so much. You can see that art sold at auction. I did this 3 years ago. It has not nudged from 2%. So certainly not enough has changed in the last 150 years. So is there a glass ceiling? Or is it just a thick layer of men? So it's time to reclaim our place. Reclamation is the process of claiming something back, or of reasserting a right, or rescuing from error, or returning to a rightful course. Women are on the move in the art world, as be seen by the huge jump in shows of their work. The one in that I went to at the Clark of the women in Paris, they had a hard time getting the artwork because so many museums were clamoring. So it's a seller to do women artists right now. But now we need to start buying their work. So I'm going to now look at some of the work of contemporary women artists, many of whom I know, some I don't. And many were in the show that I co-curated in 2018 of the same name, Reclamation. Okay. This is a painting by Gabriela Gonzalez de Loso. Contemporary painting. Look familiar? She's a native New Yorker. She's of Cuban and Ecuadorian heritage. And this mirrors the work of that beautiful painting we saw early on by Adélaïde Labille-Guiard. The teacher, which obviously is still Labille-Guiard, and Gabriela at her feet. So we're still learning from our sisters in history. Beautiful, look at the colors, just gorgeous, pure, beautiful color. Here's another one. It's a little bit too bright. I'm sorry, I may have brightened it a bit. This is by Ellen Cooper. This was in the show. It's called The Defiance of Erebus. She's a Philadelphia artist that I met, one of the first artists I met when I started painting again. Her mother was a well-known portrait artist, so she grew up with it in her life, and as you know, normal to be painting. And this painting is perfect. If you were to see it in real life, I think that it was the sort of people's choice of the show because it's so stunning. There's a woman that she met on the street in New York. She was there doing some kind of a tour herself. And the woman was so striking to her that Ellen, who's a very quiet person, I would say, went up to her and asked her if she might be able to paint her. And the woman said, absolutely not. I don't remember the details, but Ellen somehow or another was able to give her a card. They were able to be in touch, and slowly and finally she allowed her to paint this portrait. And the defiance of Erebus is, of course, the defiance of death, and this is a woman who was living her life to the fullest throughout it. It's, one of the things that I really want everybody to be thinking about is, how women paint women. And it's different. It's different. We're looking for different things. I think we're always looking for soul and not the physical being or body, this one versus that one. And this one certainly captures it. Here's another, Katherine Stone. She's a young painter in Vancouver, Canada. This is called The Shadow of My Hand, which I think is just a really beautiful name and a beautiful self-portrait. She has a very, very soft touch that I've always loved.
You're running everything. I'm going to answer for you. Yes, how you been going?
Oh, Zoom, I think we've got most of this painting in, and I'm going to leave it up for a little while so people can take a good look at it. This is Aleah Chapin. She was raised in Seattle. I think she's in New York now. Another young painter, relatively. This is called It Was the Sound of Their Feet. This is 10 feet by 6 feet. It's a huge painting. And this is a painting of her aunties. She has this large Norwegian family of frolicking women. She has many, many paintings of them and all of their glory. And I just love this. I love it so much. This painting won first prize at the National Gallery in London's biannual, I think it is, portrait competition, which is one of the top competitions in the world. And I remember at the time reading that a journalist, a male who covered the portrait show, was grousing that he did not need to see an anatomy book in an art museum. So that's what he thought of this. Ugh. Anyway, beautiful. There's a beautiful painting by Margaret Boland. And Margaret is another one of the women painters that I encountered pretty early on when I went back to painting, and completely inspired me. And she's also brilliant. And if you ever get a chance to hear her speak, she's just amazing in how she puts the world together. This is called Someone to Watch Over Me, which I think is just a magnificent title to a magnificent painting. She has a whole background in painting women and girls, African American, and people of many colors, races, with different face paint on, which is about what the world puts on them, or they choose to wear in order to hide behind, or whatever you want to think about what all of that is. But these, particularly the one girl in the upper left, she's known since infancy as the daughter of a very close friend of hers, and they have worked together as a team on many of Margaret's paintings. She teaches at the New York Academy of Art. Dominique Medici, a close friend and painter that I love. She's one of the best teachers I have ever studied with her kindness, compassion, and full heart. She teaches out of Seattle and New York. And I forget the name of this painting. Forgive me, Dominique, if you're online. Alyssa Monks. I'm trying to give you a variety of approaches. All of it is figurative. It's my interest. It's my only interest. I'm only interested in people. I can't get off of it no matter how hard I try. No, I don't even try. I love it. Alyssa paints really large canvases in multiple layers. And this one is from a series of paintings she did after her mother died, who she was very, very close to. And this is the way that she expressed her grief through long, long walks in the woods. And so there it is. She's painting her grief and her solace. Teaches and lives in New York as well. Jennifer Anderson. I chose this just because it is a very different approach, and I really love Jennifer's work. She's a British figurative oil painter. She lives in Scotland. She has been exhibited at the London Portrait Award recipient as well, the Royal Academy, Royal Society of Portrait Painters. She's very prolific, and her work is just lovely. Sharon Sprung, New York City also. She's been exhibiting. I was looking at her resume today. Again, Sharon was one of my early influencers, and just love her palette, the colors, her touch, her emotion. And she's a master at painting flesh and skin. She studied at the Art Students League and has been showing consistently since 1975. She's shown worldwide. And again, she was one of my original inspirations. Beautiful work. This is Amaya Gurpiti. I think that's the way she says it. Spanish painter or portraitist. She teaches at the Florence Academy of Art. And she, I think, almost exclusively works in drawing. It's all that I've ever seen of hers. But her touch and her ability to capture emotion is just, I think, magnificent. Lee Price, Hilarious. She paints herself over and over and over again. I think she's changing that now. And she tells women's stories. She suffered from an eating disorder, and a lot of her paintings are about women's relationship to food. And I love this one. Let's just go for the raspberry, you know, all the way through. And I love her willingness to just put herself out there without any pretense to anything other than her total immersion in that ice cream. I love it. Katie O'Hagan. She was born and raised in the far north of Scotland and moved to the United States in 1993. This is a self-portrait. I think it's absolutely, again, brilliant. It was painted during a very difficult divorce. She had two small children at the time, and she was living in the United States, not her homeland. And art saved her life. Couldn't be more out there than that. She's her work is shown internationally. Beautiful work, lots of really interesting topics. Dana Salzman is an Israeli painter that I don't know anything about, but I was struck by this a while ago and added it to my collection. I've tried doing some research on her, and I don't think she wants that because I couldn't just, all I could find her with some of her work pinned on Pinterest and really nothing more. So if anybody finds anything out about her, that would be great. And you can see that I chose all portraits of women, and very, hopefully a variety, and hopefully speaking women's truth. Here's another one that is brand new to me, and she's a Danish painter, Dutch painter. I'm sorry. And I love her palette. I just love that. It's gorgeous. And I'm going to finish with this monumental visual autobiography. This is by Leslie Adams, who is on this call with us. And she was my mentor, and she's my friend. This is 8 feet by 5 feet, and you have to see it in person to appreciate the incredible detail and quality of this drawing. It's a drawing. And this is the artist in her studio, and it speaks to the depth and purpose and commitment it takes to produce great art. So there's my tip of the hat to Leslie, who I love. And so that's the situation. Women are still not getting their share. They apologize way too much, as far as I'm concerned. They get mad way too little. But how do we fix it? We're all part of it. Gender, we're all part of gender. We're all raised in the same system that devalues women and values men. So we need to check our own bias. We need to think about, when we talk about art, who do we talk about? If we talk about art, when we say something's really good, do we say, oh, that's like Degas? Oh, that's like, and refer to some great male painter? I say, take a look around and notice the numbers. If you go into a gallery and you're looking at the artwork and you notice that, count them, go ahead and count. I do gallery counts all the time. And if you notice that for every 5 paintings, 2 of them are female or 1 is female, say something. Galleries are trying to please their clients. I encourage everyone to buy art by women artists, and then learn some of these names of these great women artists, contemporary and historic, and bring them up at dinner, sort of surprise people and tell them about Rosa Bonheur and wearing pants and having to get permission to do it and living with a pair of lions. Those are great conversations, and they shake things up a little bit. So it's deep, it's systemic, it's complex. Can anybody name any new artists that they learned today? Can we unmute?
I've been writing them down.
Okay.
The ones that I had not heard of: Amelie Beaury-Saurel.
Oh, hi, Judy. Hello, love.
Louise Breslin, Astra Norgard, Berthe Wegman. I had heard of, but I had forgotten about her, and I knew about Henrietta Brown because you've been doing her copy. But yeah, I also have a list over here that I wrote on the fridge of a bunch of Italian women artists whose names don't roll off the tongue, but they're They're hidden in the bottom of the Uffizi.
Can you take a picture of that and send it to me? That's Judy Takas, who's
Yes.
another great artist in Cleveland and a good friend. And I'm so glad you're there, Judy.
Yeah, made it back in time from the show, so I joined in late.
That's great.
was
Glad to
there.
see you.
You did it.
Anyone else learn any new names of that jumped out and excited you? No? Come on, Becky. You have to unmute.
The late 19th century ones that you talked about, I mean, that was also the time when figurative art was getting rolled under the bus.
Right.
And you're fabulous figurative artists. So I'm not like being all devil's advocate, but you know, like a few male artists from that era were able to kind of stay out there. And Cecilia Beaux, you know, is like one of the very, very few women artists that was able to sort of, at least in our circles, I mean, not in the national circles, because, you know, figurative art just didn't, you know, it took a backseat to the Impressionism, and then everything kind of,
Yeah.
you know,
Right. Absolutely.
from there.
Too little, too late.
Yeah.
Hey,
Well,
August.
yeah.
August, it's Catherine. Hi.
Hi, Catherine.
How are you?
I love this. I wish I could see everybody.
Yeah. I wanted to say something. I have to leave. I actually am doing shift work right now, and I have to go back to my client. So I've had the great fortune of now living in Addison County, which has Vergennes, which has a fabulous gallery called Northern Daughters.
Oh, yeah.
And Northern Daughters is run by two women, and they feature women artists. That's their goal, is to have women artists. And I just wanted to let people know about this great gallery for people
Right.
who are
Maybe we can,
looking for contemporary female artists.
great. Maybe we can go together someday.
Oh gosh. Have your next class at Northern Daughters in the summer.
So,
Anyway.
My name's Anita. I was wondering what you think of the National Museum of Women in Washington, D.C.
okay.
I was a charter member of that in, I don't know, 1985,
Mhm.
something like that. And I have made several trips there, but not recently.
Let me answer that in a little bit. I have one more slide, two more
Oh, I'm
slides.
sorry.
No, that's fine. And then I'll answer any questions. But I know some people need to leave. So let me just finish this out. I just want to say two more things. One is that the same system that discriminates against women also, as we know, discriminates against artists of color, queer, trans artists, and non-Western artists. Hopefully that's all changing. I think that there's a revolution going on, and it's just starting to take hold. So I'm going to end with my self-portrait.
Oh,
And the words of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Oliver Shiro, who during her landmark Supreme Court case quoted abolitionist Sarah Grimke, saying this: "I ask no favor of my sex. All I ask of our brethren is that they take their feet off our necks." That's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, August.
thank you.
I'm going
Cheers.
to see everybody now. Great. Oh, nice. Now I can see everybody who's allowing me to see them. Good. Well, thank you, everyone who's there. And anybody have questions?
Well, I wanted to know what you thought about the National Women's Museum in
You know,
Washington, D.C.
I feel very mixed about it. I'm really glad they're there. I support them. I just watched a really great thing on Rosa Bonheur by them. I've seen some amazing shows of some of this early art by women. And sometimes they're just too out there for me and by taste, but that's fine. I think she's there. I think it's really an important thing, and it should be super well funded. And I've seen some great work there.
Good, good.
Anyone else? Questions? Yeah, Judy.
I have a question. What do you say to people that say that a woman all show, and I kind of know your answer already, but this is a good opportunity for discussion, but
Yeah.
that say that an all woman show is discriminatory, and all artists matter and stuff like that, and that we don't need the woman show anymore, and that kind of thing, like that we've sort of outgrown it, and it marginalizes us and makes us separate instead of part of the artist community.
I'm going to let that other people say what they think about that, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Okay.
Anybody?
Well, one thing I would say, Judy, is that August has given us some pretty good statistics about how discrimination against women artists is not over.
Mm-hmm.
And so highlighting women is okay. But I think it's also important to make an effort to include more women in the big museums, because they're there and they need to be shown.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion.
I think you're right
I
on.
agree with that.
Yeah, I think that, when you look at shows like the American Women in Paris at the Clark Museum, I think it was one of the best attended shows they've ever had. When I did, our show here in Stowe, Vermont, it was the best attended show that the Helen Day Art Center has ever had, and they've been around for decades. People came from Massachusetts to see that show. So I think there's a real hunger for it. And that when it's all women, you're looking at women's art and you're thinking about the fact that women made it. Where if there's a woman in a show, especially if there's a well-known man in the show, they're just not going to get that viewing. And I think that there should be more and more pressure on museums and galleries to carry more art by women, and then it won't be an issue at all, But right now, it's an issue. I think that there's some very top artists here who can speak to that uphill climb. So, Tom.
August, first, thank you very much. This is so interesting. I wrote down the names of about 10 artists who are new to me, so I appreciate that a lot. So I have a comment and a question. The comment is with the numbers. I want to apologize that there are only like 2 or 3 men here. It seems like I don't get it. I don't understand why there aren't a lot more. But anyway, that's the reality of it. But it goes along with the other numbers you've been talking about, I'm afraid. Yeah. But my question is, a lot of the paintings you showed us, especially 19th century, the lighting was so important. A lot of them, I would use the word luminous to describe them. And was that an accident of the ones you selected, or is it that those artists their paintings are more luminous than typical, or what? I know there are plenty of male artists who have luminous paintings also, but it seemed like a higher percentage of women artists here.
That's an interesting question, Tom. I don't think I can answer it. Leslie, do you have any thoughts on it?
I don't either. I can't answer that either. I don't know.
I might just be, I have a very particular taste for sure. What I love is what I love. And and so it might be selection that way. But I think it also is style. You know, art always goes in with trends and style. And so it might have been both. Thanks. Any other questions, thoughts?
Well, I'll make a comment, August.
Uh-huh.
First, thank you so much for those kind words. That was so kind of thoughtful of you. And you know, I adore your paintings. I love your paintings, and to watch your, since you had mentioned that we've known each other for quite some time since you went back to painting. It's just been amazing to me to watch your devotion to painting and your growth and your success. It's just been really a blessing for me. I wish you'd be showing some more of your paintings besides just your self-portrait here. So if you aren't familiar with the whole body of August's work, please all certainly look at August's work. But there were names. I wasn't smart enough to write down the names that I had never heard of. So I'll have to be lying in bed tonight thinking of which ones were which. But yeah, some new paintings that I'm not familiar with, new artists.
Yeah.
And ones that we forget about, you know, that we have to go and revisit again. So that'll be fun to do.
And I will pass along the compliment, Leslie and Judy. Look up Judy Taka's Leslie Adams. They're two fabulous painters, contemporary women painters, and you know, you'll enjoy their work. Leslie, I had one of the things that women don't have very often, and it's so important that men often have as mentors, right? So they're in art school and their teacher stands at their side and they've got some talent, and so the teacher helps to move them along, gets them into a gallery right out of school, bam. And there's a lot of restrictions to that kind of relationship, at least with male teachers and female students. But Leslie walked me step by step through the process of getting the portrait of Peter Shumlin, and convinced me that I could do it, and gave me the tools of how to present it, and, you know, how to create a portfolio, how to, you know, what size, all of those things. And so that part is so important, is mentoring and women helping each other, and helping their careers, super important. So.
The part she's leaving out modestly is that she called me several times and said, "I'm not going to apply. I can't do it."
So I said, I don't want to.
And I wanted to hit her on the head all the way from Ohio.
I said, I just got out of stress for 30 years in women's health. I don't want to be painting some guy.
And I said, get over it. Do it.
And I'm so thrilled that I did. It was a great thing to do.
And a beautiful painting.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else?
Can I just ask a quick question? I don't know
You
how.
certainly may.
Who was the woman that made us think of Sargent? What was her name?
Cecilia Beaux.
How do you spell her last name?
Beau is X. Mhm.
Beaux.
I mean, I've always liked Sargent. When I saw that painting, I thought, how come I've never seen this woman before? Because that's my, you know, it really speaks to me.
And as Michelle said, this recording will be on the library site. Anybody who wants to go back through it again.
Oh, wonderful.
You can jump forward, jump back, I think, and take a longer look at some of those paintings, and then delve in and take a look at the body of work of some of those women, because if they did one that was that good, they did more. And it's worth exploring, and fun, great fun.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank all of you for taking the time this evening, and joining me. There's nothing I like to talk about more than women. Art. And if anybody has a group that they would like me to, hi Leah. Hi,